Hi, I had one of my viewers asked me to speak more about my near-death experience that happened when I was 25 years old, and I wanted to discuss some of the things that I realized, and I'm going to try to make this as clear as I can. Again, it was an experience that happened 27 years ago now, and I have to say that it is something that I feel fortunate. I'm full of gratitude for having that experience, that I was basically chosen for that experience. Not everyone who has a near-death experience can remember it or find the lessons or learn from it. When I was at that age, I have to say, I was a 25-year-old. I wasn't, maybe a little bit more immature as well. I was finishing college. I had spent a lot of time in school. So I was in an energy where I was doing what, someone in their 20s back in those days did, and drinking a lot and getting into things and experimenting with things as we did back in the 90s. And it was a different time. I went to raves. I loved electronic music. I loved dancing. I loved going out. I was very social. At that time, I had gone through a pretty tumultuous relationship, a 7-year relationship with a boyfriend that I had in college, and that didn't, it was not the best thing for me, and I knew that, yet we still had this attraction. And I wasn't aligned. I know spiritually I wasn't even there. Even though I've had spiritual experiences, I had many gifts prior to this actual experience, in my near-death experience. I would have prophetic dreams. I would have knowings, like knowing things. I felt more in tuned than your average person, and maybe that was the reason why I dabbled in a lot of things. Again, in college, it was just a great time, and so after graduation, after the year leading up to my near-death experience, I, I had experienced some other spiritual, darker, I would call maybe darker entities, darker energies, and if you don't believe in any of that, or you've never experienced that, I definitely would not wish that on anyone. There are, if people have heard about like the shadow man or the hat man, there's incubuses and succubuses. There's like really lower energies out there, and I believe that when you are opening yourself up to things, especially when you're not possibly living your life in alignment with your higher self, with your creator, with your spiritual potential. And I definitely, at that age and at that time, I wasn't. And I'm actually very lucky. I'm very not lucky. I'm blessed. I'm full of gratitude that I actually made it through that cycle, that period in my life where I probably many times have put myself in situations where some people might not have made it, and lived to tell. But and maybe I'll talk more about these darker energies that led up to the time when I had my open heart surgery. But it is important. It's part of where I was energetically, where I was vibrationally, how I was able to have those experiences. And if you're familiar with that shadow energy, that hat man, and some people can see it. My sister experienced it. My first boyfriend out of high school, and it was in college. His mother was very religious, and we lived all in the same apartment complex. It was a quadruplex, and in college, and she had experienced this energy, and I don't know how. Maybe it was because she was very religious, and that's the first time I've ever heard of it. And during that time, that's where I learned more about it. I actually had that experience, and again, it's a very at that time, it was a very scary experience for me. And like I said, I knew several people, mainly my sister and my boyfriend at the time, his mother. So I don't know if it was directly linked to where the location was, probably part of that, and also where I was spiritually. So having experienced that and being at that vibrational match, I was able to feel, see, hear, experience that part, that darker, that very heavy, very almost, I would say, demonic, that devil energy. Not a good, not a good. It was definitely not a good energy, and some of you are able to relate. Perhaps you've experienced something like that. Perhaps maybe you see it in dreams. Maybe you've had night terrors. I know some people have night terrors. Some people feel, or they've seen, or felt, or have been in the presence of that type of energy. I'm definitely, I feel that I've overcome that type of energy as well since then, thank God, because there's definitely, there was no way to pray it away, I felt, because I tried that. It was just really raising the vibration, our vibration, how we do that, how I did that was, and it took a long time, was to change how I operated. At that time, I feel that, everybody goes through that selfish stage where we don't have a spiritual path, we don't have that spiritual life, we don't have that connection with God. And I definitely was at that place. Not that I've always had a foundation, I've always believed in a higher power, something bigger than myself, but my actions were not in line with that idea. So having those experiences prior to my open heart surgery, I was very aware that there is this invisible world, this spiritual world that exists, and there's negative or darker aspects of the spiritual unseen world, and there's also the light and more positive aspects. So people call that different things. You have a different name for different things. Everyone's different. I'm trying to explain to the best of my ability to put into words this time in my life that was leading up to my near-death experience during my open heart surgery, and that time frame where I was sick and had to undergo what I went through. So I did tell my story about my near-death experience. I have a few videos out, and you can check that out on my channel, but I'm not going to go through the whole experience again, but I wanted to focus more on the reality of the spiritual world. And some people, and I'm never telling anybody what to do, I'm just drawing from my own experience and what I know to be true in what I've experienced in my life. And, you know, it's hard to talk about because everyone has different beliefs, and this is definitely not a doctrine. This is not a religious thing to me. What happened, and having this near-death experience, it solidified that I had this loving, unconditional creator, this perfect spirit that lives within all of us, literally. And there is this veil. There's this veil. I know a lot of people talk about that in other NDE stories, but there is this veil that was lifted where I experience that unconditional love and the reality, the nature of reality. And my experience showed me how loved we truly are, and how personal of a relationship we can have with our Creator. It's this energy is not something far away. This energy is right here. So I remember thinking heaven is right here on earth, and I don't think of heaven as a place. I feel heaven is an energy. It's a space where consciousness, you're perfect, where everything is perfect. There is no shame, there's no jealousy, there's none of the human emotions, like the lower emotions that we have or we experience here on earth, on this 3D, this physical plane. We love each other, even people that you don't even know, people that you feel are your enemies or that have done you wrong or betrayed you. So that's what I experience. And what makes it difficult is coming back here in consciousness, coming back from my near-death experience and knowing that reality. So can you imagine, you're in a place, you're, by the grace of God, you know, we have this experience, and you're taken to a place where everything is love, and you realize that the dramas of life, it's similar to being in a play. Your life is like a play, and there's always someone watching, whether it's your angels or God or ancestors, you know, God and your angels or archangels, if you believe in that, whether you do or not. It's you know, I'm not here to convince anyone. I was just asked to speak about my near-death experience, and there's so much that it encompasses, so many emotions, so many feelings, so much truth that was revealed to me, and the clarity that I felt, and I knew that I was safe and loved and I am, and you are too, you are actually love. You are the energy of love at the core, behind this physical body, this temple. And of course, our physical body here is important that we take care of it. At that time, I was not taking care of my body. Um, I was a binge drinker. I was partying. I was smoking cigarettes. Um, I was, not eating right. Half the time I didn't eat that much. I mean, I was still exercising because that's always been a part of my life. But that time leading up to my open heart surgery, I was very sick. I had endocarditis, and yeah, it's still so surreal to me, because to put myself back in that space where I had such clarity, it is a little disappointing sometimes to think about how pure we are, how pure, and without all the history and all the stories that we live through on Earth here. Everything is forgiven, and it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful because everything is forgiven. There's no anger. There's no animosity. There's no anxiety. And I've lived with this anxiety, this underlying anxiety, all my life, and during that time, I didn't experience the anxiety that I've always had. I didn't really worry about what anybody thought. There was no shame in me being in a gown, like I was in a hospital gown for a month, having people come in and out of my room every day. People I didn't know, doctors, nurses, the therapists, the respiratory therapists, everyone in my whole medical team coming in, and I'm just in my gown, and half the time I wasn't covered up, and there was no shame in that, in the rawness, and that's how I felt. I was so much at peace. I felt loved. I felt calm. I felt safe. I felt the presence of God. I mean, there's no other way to say it. I felt the presence of the universe, and we are one with the universe. I know it sounds, people have a hard time understanding that, but we really are all connected. There's this connectedness that unfortunately we don't get to experience every single day, every moment of our lives. Sometimes we, just like what happened to me, I was, by the grace, it really is the grace of God, of my Creator, of my higher self, that spirit, the Most High, to have given me that experience. Because I didn't create it. So if I didn't create it, it was given to me. That I'm clear of. And why that happened, some people go through surgeries and they don't have another spiritual experience. They don't get to have that veil taken off. But what I learned is that we're here to realize who we are, and that took me several decades to understand, and that everything is exactly how it's supposed to be. Everything is as it should be. Everything is perfect. You are perfect. how Spirit views us is that we are perfect, because our souls are perfect, our light, we all are actual lights. So when you hear love and light, or you are the light, or you have a light within you, that is literally true. You literally have that light. And I never thought about it that way. Again, I wasn't super spiritual prior. I did notice that I had certain abilities. I was able to feel other people's moods, and a lot of you guys have that same abilities, but it was times 1,000. You could feel people's energy. You could feel, almost know people's thoughts. And that was, it was just this love that permeated throughout my environment. At that time, I could actually see almost down to like the atoms of things moving. Everything was moving. Everything, it was almost like, it was like everything was alive. And it's really hard to explain, but it was a beautiful flow, and everything was in flow. The colors that I experienced were nothing like I've ever experienced before, nor afterwards. It literally felt like a veil was lifted, and I was able to, and I don't claim to have that epiphany, then all understanding it at that time. I felt like I was trying to understand it at that time. So there was that consciousness that was very pronounced, my consciousness. I knew that I felt actually more alive and totally healed when I had my near-death experience, when I was in that space. So let me drink some coffee. I know it's hard to try to put it into words and have you understand it, but if you maybe close your eyes, and a lot of times I'll close my eyes to go back and remember, but it's sometimes when I close my eyes and to try to get back into that energy, it feels impossible, and it's disappointing. It's disappointing that we can't stay in that energy, in that reality. So some other things that I learned and I experienced, I felt so light. It's like I didn't feel the physical body, the heaviness of my body, of the physical body, during this experience, during my NDE. There was just so much love. I was so happy. I was in bliss, true bliss. It's the most joyful experience, the most beautiful experience. I feel that a lot of the relationships that we have and we look for in other people, if we came from, if we've come from this beautiful, loving, unconditional Godhead, I feel that a lot of us part of us remembers coming from this love, and we look for it in other people, and you're not going to be able to find it in like a romantic love relationship or even a familial type of love relationship. It's much more than that, and it's so different. It's nothing like the love, that unconditional love that you feel, that permeates through you, in you. It is what you are at your core. So I didn't want to make it too long. I wanted to touch on like the feelings of what I experienced during this time. There is no judgment. Everyone has a past, or that everyone has a story here on earth, and we're all living our life, and we have this journey, we have a blueprint, we have different potentials. And part of my potential was to have this experience. It was this timeline. And again, I can't explain why I experienced it. I mean, along with possibly hundreds of thousands of other people have experienced something similar or the same thing. Mainly something similar, because I believe everyone's NDE, if they have one, or a spiritual experience, it doesn't have to be from a near death. Something profound like this is unique for everyone, each individual. So my story is not going to be the same as your story. The way I am able to express it and explain it and articulate it, and maybe I'm not the best, I don't have the best vocabulary to articulate it, but it is difficult to find the vocabulary to explain and express and share the whole experience with you. But I tell you, it is beautiful. It is something that I will never forget. I cherish what I went through. I felt like I was 100% healed even before I went through my physical healing after my open heart surgery. I feel like I became more compassionate. Material things didn't mean as much to me. And throughout my life after the open heart surgery, my focus wasn't on money or status or clout, and I'm not judging that, but this is what I felt. These are some of the things that I experienced and had a realization about and of. So it was a total shift in perspective, and it really changed my life. It changed my life on how I viewed the world. And did I live my life perfectly? And, did I continue to have the feeling of unconditional love afterwards and up until now? Unfortunately, I would say no. I did have very profound spiritual moments, such as the times I was there for my nephews, both of my nephews, my youngest nephews' births. That was that love, that unconditional love, when they were both born and I was there. That was probably as close as I came to that feeling, that space of what I experienced in my NDE. So I was also in a car accident. My car, I was alone. I mean, it was only my car, and I was hydroplaning. And I watched, or when I was experiencing hydroplaning, and maybe some of you have experienced this as well, where time stood still or it slowed down tremendously, where I was able to think, and I felt guided when I was, and so grateful that it just, I didn't, no one was hurt when I hydroplaned off of this hill and into the woods, well, actually the grass line, the tree line, before the tree line. And but as far as having that same experience and living, at this higher plane, that higher energy, that higher elevation, that higher consciousness, I don't think we're meant to be in that space, in that feeling of unconditional love at all time. I mean, that would be amazing, but I think it would be very hard to function being in that space. So for some reason, I heard that I wasn't allowed to stay where I was, or I just knew. I was almost telepathically told to me that I wasn't staying, but I definitely knew. I kept on hearing, or there was just a knowing, and part of it was hearing words telepathically, ideas given to me, and I knew that I wasn't allowed to stay, but it was my home. It felt like home. It felt like I had been there before. And when you're in that space, that energy, that level of consciousness, over time, that experience fades. That's why if you do have the experience, I encourage you to write it down if you're able to, or have someone else write it down while you talk about it. Because it will fade, and your experience, just like your memory, sometimes we don't remember what happened yesterday, much less, 27 years ago. But this experience definitely stuck in my mind, and it was several years before I actually put it down on paper. And of course, everything depends on your own situation. Everyone's unique, everybody's experience. And that's why you'll see online that there's so many people that have so many different stories. So everybody's story differs, but you could feel, or you could recognize this underlying theme of being unconditionally loved, to being home, that this is all an illusion. Like this physical life, it is an illusion. Like the reality is when we go home, or when we leave our physical body. And also the reality that we never actually die, that there is no true death. And so if I wasn't sure of it before, I'd gone to church, grew up Catholic, they talk about eternal life. And let me tell you, having the near-death experience, I truly understand now, as I did then when I had my NDE, that we never die, we never truly, the physical body will go away, or will go back to, go back in energy, right? But, or it changes forms, but we're all energy, and we're also spirit. And that's that's what the core of what we are is. Let me say that right. We all have a spiritual body or a spiritual essence about us. And sometimes we're not aware of this. Most of the time, people aren't aware. Some people have this gift where they can read energy, or they have spiritual gifts that are given, that are developed by free will. That's why I always encourage self-development and getting on that spiritual path and discovering, God, your spiritual team in the mundane, in the things that we take for granted every day in nature, because it's all around us. So hopefully, whoever wanted to know more about my NDE, hopefully that touched a little bit about, that helped a little bit to help you understand my actual experience and some of the things that I realized. And again, I'm so sorry. It's very difficult for me to put it into words, because it's just something that when you experience it, that clarity, that something that that you're sure of, this is the thing that I am so sure of, that you are unconditionally loved. You are love, and the love is God, and it's much bigger. The idea, the energy, the concept is much bigger than what we can actually put into words in any language. So I'm going to leave you with that. If there's any specific questions that you have about my NDE, or any comments, please feel free to leave it on the comment section below. I try my best to recall. I've written some things down over the years, and I go back through it, and I probably need to add more. But like I said, if you have some type of spiritual experience or something, that everything matters. Everything is in perfect alignment. Everything is unique to you and your story. And I felt that this was actually why this happened to me in my story, in my journey, it was part of what my story was going to be. Somehow, intuitively, I know that there was no coincidence. And as you guys know, if you listen to any of my other videos, I don't really believe in coincidences. Everything, the synchronicities that happen in our lives, is a call to pay attention. So I'm going to leave this message with you guys, like, where we put our attention, where we put our energy, you can have a deeper and a better understanding of your purpose in life and why you're here. Some people have those thoughts like I do, and there's many purposes, there's many potentials, that how you could express yourself. And I feel that God, you as an individual, God is expressing himself, it's not a him or her, through you. So everyone's story is beautiful. You can make the most of it, and we have free will. So Your life is a gift. You being here is a gift. So just take some time to, you know, show gratitude and be grateful and put out great energy and good energy for anyone out there, because we're all trying to figure it out in this thing we call life. So take care, and I will see you guys on the next video.